Hey, my friend, welcome back to the MindShift podcast. I'm your host, Darrell Evans. I'm excited to have you here with me again today. And I want to thank you in advance for taking some time out of your day to spend it here with us. You could have been anywhere in the world. Actually, you are anywhere in the world, but you're here with us listening. So we appreciate that. Today, I have on the show Jeff Kopinski. He is the co founder and president of Huemor, a digital marketing agency, a digital agency dedicated to building memorable websites. Over the last 13 years, he has led his team to nearly 500 successful website launches for brands like Live Nation, Revlon, NBC Sports, and the United Nations. Now, let me be clear. If you've done 500 websites, you know what you're doing. Number two, if you've launched them for brands like that, you know what you're doing. And so when Jeff's team reached out to mine, knowing that I have a digital marketing agency background and that I never want to build another website ever again, I was excited to have Jeff on the show. Jeff, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on today. I appreciate it.
Awesome, awesome. Now let's start with the obvious. Why do you love website design so much?
Oh, man, I could probably talk about that for days. I so in the realm of digital media, there's so many rented channels that we all operate in on a daily basis. Um, what you're doing on LinkedIn may be amazing for you today, and then LinkedIn changes what they're doing tomorrow, and now you're no longer getting that same sort of reach or audience or anything like that. What I really love about websites is the fact that it's one of the few true pieces of owned media that you have as an organization online, and it's something that you really can shape and mold and make your own. And um, someone with a creative background and just has always kind of been a bit of a tinkerer and a builder. Um, Websites are kind of like my digital clay. It's really fun to work with them and then turn them into something that's not only really good looking, but a really, really effective tool for a business to do business.
Hmm.
So
Your tagline is as good as any that I've seen in 13 years. Memorable websites that sell. How did you come up with that?
um, probably way too many iterations on those words as a starting point, but ultimately we wanted something that was really concise that got to the point and shared um, not only the fact that there's going to be something visually interesting with the sites that we make or some moment that um, is a differentiator, but there's a business goal at the end of the day, right? Like you're a B2B business, you're trying to sell something with your website. What that is will change. So um, it was the most concise way that we were able to communicate those things. And I'm glad you enjoy it because I really enjoy it myself.
Yeah. Well, I'm a by background. So when I go back to my beginning statement of saying I never want to build a website again, I'm very clear on what you said, which is the website to me is, and there's two assets in digital to me that are always the number one and number two owned media assets that you have to pay attention to. And that is your website and your email list. And today in 2023, heading into 2024, to me, that has not changed since the day I got online in 2020, sorry, in 2003, 2003. That dates me a little bit. So I'm 20 years online, and that opinion has never changed aside from the sensationalization of TikTok and YouTube shorts and Instagram reels. And to your point, LinkedIn, which is picking up a lot of steam at any given day, any of those platforms can and will change because of their needs. And it leaves creators, business owners often very frustrated. And then when you go back, you're like, hey, how much time and energy have you spent in building a memorable website that sells? And what type of what I call what's your digital database look like in terms of people who know, like, and trust you? And so if you don't have those two things, shame on you for going all in on social media. And yes, I said that. Um, Jeff, when did you first get your start building sites? You said you got a bit of a creative background. When did you first take an interest in building websites?
Um, Probably a similar time frame to when you were getting into it. You were saying like early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of when I started to first learn HTML and get into that thing. Actually, first I cut my teeth building custom MySpace pages for people like that. That was
Oh, oh.
yeah.
You don't
So
look old enough to
people
know MySpace, but I guess okay.
yeah. So local bands and stuff would contact me and be like, hey, like I want a cool MySpace page, and I learned basic HTML and tables and how to modify those layouts to include, all sorts of cutting edge things at the time, like marquees or like embedded audio files or whatever that was.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so I was doing that. I was still in high school at that point. I was maybe like a junior or senior in high school doing that for local bands. Um, then from there, kind of transitioned into doing really basic static websites. And aside from that, just as an individual, like I've always kind of had a creative knack. Like I was creating my own comic books when I was a kid. I was
Mm.
featured in Lego magazine at one point for putting together like a pretty crazy replica of the Titanic. Um, I went to school to be an art teacher. Decided that I wanted to um, actually like eat and have some money. Transitioned out of that into a traditional graphic design program. But yeah, like I said, I've always been a tinkerer. I've always tried to flex my skills creatively, and digital and web design has scratched that itch. Now these days, am I designing the sites that we put out? No, but I still have fingerprints on a lot of what we do.
That's great. Yeah, that's it doesn't surprise me the creative journey and the creative background. Um, he said, "I decided I wanted to eat." That's a good one. That's a good one. Um, Compare and contrast website design. Let's not go back to the very beginning, but what's changed in website design in the days of when WordPress dominated? And don't get me wrong, I think WordPress is still the dominant self-hosted player in the web design space, but can you compare and contrast WordPress in the days when WordPress was like the best thing anyone could do outside of building HTML and tables on their own to the day where we are today, where SaaS platforms have been all the rage, whether it's Shopify, Wix, HubSpot, or even like a Squarespace? Just compare and contrast the evolution of web design in your mind as you've seen it and how it's changed over the years.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a double-edged sword, right? So you have a much lower barrier to entry at this point in time. So a lot of people that maybe don't have a technical background are now being empowered to go out there and build sites and publish those things. And I think a lot of that is amazing, and I'm excited to see that. Even with WordPress as a platform, there's a lot that you can do now that you weren't able to do, 10 years ago. Um, the challenge with it is that with that accessibility comes a lot more noise. So the ability to like quickly whip something up and publish it um, doesn't necessarily mean that what's being made and published is good. And I think that there's with the additional speed to publish, there's oftentimes less thought or strategy before you get to that final stage. Um, and I think what that's creating is in every industry that we engage with, at least, like there's just a lot out there now.
Hmm.
more so than there was 10 years ago. So even though the competition pool may be growing, there's still a lot of room for differentiation.
Hmm.
And that's where individuals like yourself or myself can kind of help guide brands to identifying what that differentiation is, and how do they cut through that noise effectively. But personally speaking, as somebody who gets to use these fancy tools now and not necessarily have to spend a lot of time just putting together basic
Hmm.
layouts and things with custom code, it's great. It's a great enablement for me. But I do think that it is a challenge for brands to think that the tools alone are going to be what allows them to be successful, and not necessarily the craft, focus, and strategy that comes before it.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me ask this question. You've had some great experience, some really large brands, Live Nation, Revlon, um, NBC Sports, etc. When it comes to, and let's speak for a little while on redesigning a website, which is what is often what shows up in my agency's world. And I want you to talk a little bit about the thought process that one should have when they think about redesigning their brand, redesigning their website. Walk us through how you think through that process with your customer, and if need be, compare and contrast a large brand versus SMB mid market company. And just talk a little bit about that so the listener, because I think they think, well, I know they think of it in many cases wrong, and they think they need to do it for the wrong reason. But I'd love to hear how you think about that given the 500 reps. And I know what it takes to do 500 reps. We haven't done 500 in our agency. We've probably been more in the two ish range, two something range. But I think that'd be a very interesting discussion to unpack.
Yeah. Um, so I think building off of what I said a moment ago, like a lot of companies, I think when they are considering a redesign, they consider it um, maybe like a technical exercise, or a um, putting a new window dressing on what they already have. And frankly, like if you approach it that way, you're just not going to be successful. We have a brand and business objective focus as the core to whatever redesign we approach. So at the end of the day, the companies that we're working with are trying to accomplish something. It could be improving the number of leads that are coming in through their website. It could be um, recruiting top talent. It could be creating extremely valuable resources for their customers. It could be a combination of all of those things. But first, digging into whatever that business challenge is and kind of rallying all the thought process and planning around that, that's got to be the key to make it
Mm-hmm.
successful. It's just like if you were executing a well-designed marketing campaign, and that marketing campaign has a clear objective.
Mm-hmm.
Your website should be positioned the same exact way, except it's not a single campaign. This is a thing that's going to exist and be successful for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years if it's built the right way. Um, the next thing that we do is we really focus on our clients' customers. So if you're the CEO of an organization, and you think the website should be one way, I don't care. I really don't care what your thoughts are in the process. What matters to me is what your customers, and not just any of your customers, but your best customers, what are they looking for? What resonates with them? What made them want to work with you in the first place? What makes them continue to want to work with you? Where do they think you're failing, right? Like all of those things need to be talked about, considered, and amplified on the site in many different places over and over again. You want to use language that resonates with who they are as individuals. I can't tell you how many times I open up a B2B website page and I have no idea what a company does, because it's
Mm-hmm.
just
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, filler words and jargon and stuff that
Yeah.
doesn't really says a lot, but doesn't really mean much. So that's the
Says a
second thing
lot,
that
but
we
doesn't say
focus on.
anything.
Yeah, that's the second thing that we focus on. And I think when you're talking about an SMB versus a large organization, some of the big differences come down to bureaucracy in terms of how you manage those
Mm,
engagements. So when you are doing a redesign for a large organization, you're most likely going to have a board, you're going to have directors of probably a dozen different departments that need to weigh in on the decision making. Um, and as an agency navigating that, you obviously want to make sure people are heard, but you also don't want to put yourself in a position where it's a web design by committee. So navigating those challenges um, can be difficult at times with large businesses. And when you're level setting expectations for the project itself, you kind of have to make it known like this is going to take longer because of all these other considerations.
yeah.
When you're working with a smaller business, you might be working directly with the owner of that organization or a very small internal marketing department. Um, Now, that may limit you in terms of perspective because you might not have all of these top flight executives with their experience to weigh in on things, but it also allows you to move faster and test more frequently. Um, so those are pretty much the biggest differences, I would say. Obviously, also larger the business, the more customer avatars you need to consider. Like
Mm,
a enterprise business might have five, six, seven, eight unique customer avatars that need to be considered, whereas a small business might only have one or two. So that adds complexity as well.
yeah. Great point at the end. That last point is critical, right? It's not just about, yeah, you said it earlier and I'll just restate it. It doesn't matter what you think. A lot of people, they think they bring their ideas to the table for a redesign, and their ideas don't match the objective as the user would see it, as the customer would see it. So I love that you stated that. Um, yeah, I always say that data tells the story. It's in my world in marketing, a redesign that has a background of data, ads, SEO traffic, any outside business objective where people are coming to that website. We'll put a heat map on a website for 90 days to help tell that story. So, because we need to be objective to the conversation, notwithstanding your desire for what design you want to have involved, colors, brand, logo, etc., flow. But you got to let the data tell the story. It's not like, well, we're going to design it the way we want and get customers to behave differently. Good luck with that. See how that works out for you. Um, anyway,
Yeah,
some
and
good
it's
points you
it's
made there.
really good. It's really good to balance the qualitative and quantitative data, right? So if you if you're going through a redesign, there's probably some sort of marketing problem or challenge with the website
Right.
because like you're not getting the results that you want. So the quantitative data is going to take you so far in terms of insights because there's going to be some sort of mismatch. So actually having one-on-one conversations with clients and taking their insights that they share with you and incorporating that into design is really important as well because again, like if I am working with um I don't know if I'm working with a service-based company and I'm talking to a client and the client is raving about um their team and specifically one individual and maybe actions that that one individual is taking um and they don't really emphasize individuals on their website or they don't emphasize that service level, we're not going to get any quantitative data back on that. But the conversation has made it very clear to me that's important. That needs to be highlighted, and now that needs to be incorporated into our strategy in terms of how we execute on it.
It's a great point. Great point. When did you get your start as an entrepreneur?
I was 22 years old. Um, actually, it goes even sooner than that. When I was 13 years old, I was playing a card game, and uh, I'd go in. I play tournaments for this card game. There was like a cash entry for the card game. Every time you won a tournament, you would get credits back that you can use in store. Um, you would save up those credits. You can then buy a box of cards. Great. What I figured out was that if I can use um, my mom's food scale, I can actually determine the difference between a pack of cards that had a holographic in it and a pack of cards that did not have a holographic in it. So what I would do is I'd go buy these boxes of cards. I'd take all the packs out. I would stack them up. I'd weigh them, and I would have my 10 packs on one side that had the holographic card on it, and then I'd have my 40 packs on the other side that wouldn't. And then I would charge people a premium for the packs that have a holographic card in it. And then I would charge
Without
them a
opening
slight
them.
discount without opening them.
That was the key.
And I
You
would
didn't
charge,
say that. You didn't say that, but I got that.
yeah, sorry, they were unopened. And I gave them a guarantee. I was like, if you open this up and it doesn't have a holographic card in it, I will give you your money back and you can keep the pack of cards. Um,
I love it. I
yeah, so
love that.
I was charging double or triple for the holographic packs. I was charging $1 off for the non-holographic packs. And I was using no cash to invest in it because I was using my entry winnings to get the packs in the first place. So
I love it.
that's my first true entry point into being an entrepreneur. But Huemor came about ten years later or so. I was 22. I had just graduated college. I was got a full-time job. I was lucky to get a full-time job at the time because it was like mid-recession when that was going down. Um, started that job was freelancing on the side. Stumbled into an amazing opportunity with a large business, um, and did both for a period of time until I could not physically continue to do both for that period of time, and took the leap and transitioned and started to bring on a team. My business partner is one of my best friends from college. He was the first person I brought on board to help me kick off this thing, and um, it's been kind of history ever since. Learned a lot of things not to do, and I think like many agency owners, kind of didn't necessarily start off with this ambition of creating this big company, but
Yeah.
over time we've gotten there.
Yeah. Yeah. Great story. Boy, that's the first. That's the first on the side hustle. I love that. Got a scale to weigh the cards. That's outrageous. Good stuff. Hey, so we were talking offline a little bit, and you said you'd posted something on LinkedIn about some lessons learned here this year. If you're open to it, take us through that thought process and what happened, what you learn, and maybe someone on the other end could benefit from your learnings this year.
Yeah, absolutely. So last 2 years we've grown pretty dramatically as an organization. I think um, 2 years ago we maybe had 35 people. Today we sit at about 65 total on the team. And obviously, with that amount of growth in that short period of time, there's a lot of changes and things to processes and everything else. And um, me personally, I've also gone through a pretty big life change this year. I had my first kid earlier this year.
Congratulations.
And thank you. In preparation of that, I needed to hire an operator because we were at a size where I could not solely do like oversee the operations for the organization anymore. I needed this like assistance in that front. Also had this kid coming, and I knew that was going to take me, out of the swing of things for a couple months. So kind of rushed into the decision of hiring this operator, even though they had a great resume and came recommended, etc. Um, Turns out that that person, um, without going into too many details, was doing a lot of things that was not good or in the best interest of the business, and was not driving the organization forward. Um, and we had to part ways with this individual. It was difficult because this person was overseeing maybe 80% of the business that was happening at that given time. And it was a major setback for us. For the 6 months or so of their tenure, we lost a lot of ground on a number of things. We damaged relationships with team members. We damaged relationships with clients. Nothing that I'm proud of, but it's just a reality of what happened. What I learned from it is, regardless of an individual's experience, you need oversight and you need measures in place, even if somebody is an executive level hire. Another thing I learned was that a lot of agencies, when you are being taught or I don't know, there's a lot of different places you can go and get advice on growing an agency and whatnot. And one of the things that they kind of say over and over again is that, you need to make yourself redundant in the business. You need to get yourself out of the operations. You need to, get everything to run tip top without you, right? From someone who attempted to do it, who had been building towards it, I don't think it's impossible to do that, but I also think that there is a very special piece that an agency owner or a founder has as a fingerprint on an organization. And I think there's a lot of value to continuing to have that tie to the organization and being present in what you're doing. Not saying like do all the jobs yourself, but to take yourself out of it completely, in my opinion, is a misstep, and it's one that I've learned from and have now kind of started to bounce back from that and fix things. And lastly, I think it's just not taking any client or any individual on your team for granted. Like, just because one person might be at a higher level or in control of more things doesn't mean that the opinions of all these other individuals aren't valid or just as valid as that individual.
Yeah.
And there were moments in that where I had gotten negative feedback on this individual, and I chalked it up to they just don't like the change in the dynamic,
Changes.
or they don't
Yeah.
know. Had I listened to that a little bit more closely earlier on, I might have been able to pinpoint some of these issues earlier on, and course corrected sooner. Tough lesson learned, but we've since elevated somebody in the company into that role to take over rather than doing an outside hire, and it's been tremendously successful. I've started to get more involved with the strategy of our projects again, which I actually really enjoy doing. It's something I'm passionate about, much less passionate about financial spreadsheets, much more passionate about making really good websites, and starting to build up those relationships with team members more too, and having more one-on-ones with people that I wasn't previously having one-on-ones with and things like that. So lots of positives that have come out of what was a seemingly pretty big negative.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, listen, sorry you had to go through that. It isn't something that I haven't been through a few times in my 30 years, and isn't something I haven't seen with our clients. Growth is challenging. It's not what a lot of people think it is. I mean, to go from 35 to north of 60, to work with the types of clients that you're working with on a large scale, that's a lot of, there's a lot of complexity in that. And the hiring of that one individual, it's a big task. It's a big task. And again, you ended up going, you look back, you reflect, you say, okay, noted, note to self, and you'll be better as a result. You're a better CEO today than you were before that happened. And I'd almost argue that if it hadn't happened, the growth opportunity wouldn't have presented itself, or it would have had to present itself at some point because you needed to get through that hump to get to the next level. So I know it sucks. We call it the breakdown to breakthrough moment in the MindShift community, but appreciate you sharing that and being willing to share that. And it is tough because one of my mentors always says, you got to make a lot of great decisions to build a good company. And sometimes only one could really throw things sideways. And you don't do it intentionally. You do it with the best intention at heart. And but again, you're on the other side of it now. I'm believing that you guys are going to be just fine. So congratulations on building a company with 60 plus employees. Let's be sure to give you some kudos for that. That's fantastic. You're doing great work in the world of web design, and having that web design mean something of value for the organization. So why don't you let everyone know where they can find you, they can find your brand, find out more about the great work that you guys are doing.
Sure. If you want to check out Huemor, our website is huemor.rocks. We spell it a little funny. And you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active. It's just Jeffrey Kapinski on LinkedIn. Look for the guy who looks kind of like this. And if anyone's listening wants either my insights or insights from an expert on our team, when you visit our website, there's a big button on the top right that says free website analysis. Click that, and we'll give you a breakdown on your website, no strings attached.
Yeah. And I appreciate that invitation because on the outside looking in, Jeff's site is absolutely gorgeous. Number one. Number two, if you don't know what you don't know, take the free website analysis and have his team draw up their thoughts for you, because a lot of entrepreneurs, they're trying to cut corners and AI now and all this stuff. And I get it, but don't make one of the biggest mistakes of your business life by not taking your web design seriously. It is an asset. And I believe still to this day, the number one asset in your business, followed only by an email list. That being said, until I'm proven wrong, which I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, I actually have a hypothesis of when that could happen. We'll save that for another episode. But Jeff, man, I really appreciate you taking time to spend some time with us. You guys are going to find Jeff Kapinski at Huemor.rocks, HUEMOR.rocks. And he's the guy you want to talk to if you want memorable websites that sell. Jeff, I'm glad we had an opportunity to connect. We're going to link up everything in the show notes for people to find you both on LinkedIn and at your website and get that free analysis. All the best to you in your entrepreneurship journey. And I still can't believe the scale taught you everything. That's a good story, my friend. For everyone else listening, thank you for spending some time today. Hopefully you got some value out of today's discussion. If you have some needs in the website design arena, please check out Jeff Kapinski. You're not going to be let down in any way, shape, or form. If you have not yet, hit the follow or subscribe button. Do that right now so you never miss an episode. We're very, very pleased to be around the 4.5-year mark. We couldn't do that without your listening support. We're not ad supported. We're here just bringing you content from great entrepreneurs every single week. Every now and then you get to hear from me, and you tolerate that around these great guests. And so I'm very grateful for that. If you have any questions about today's episode, or you have a topic that you'd like us to cover, or a guest that you'd like us to interview, meet me over on Instagram at Mr. Darrell Evans. And until next time, I'll see you again on another episode of the MindShift podcast. See you soon. Hit the subscribe button so you can become a part of the MindShift community. We'll help you shift your mind so you can shift your results.